All right, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about the Hyprland configuration and how to configure certain things within your config and updating like things like key bindings, your window rules, and how to configure your monitors and just different things to get your Hyprland set up the way you want it to. And this is assuming that you already have Hyprland installed, whether it's through a pre-configured configuration, or if it was from a distro, or if you just install Hyprland and started configuring it yourself. So all of these ways, these things still apply. It may just be set up a little bit differently by default depending on the way you installed your Hyprland instance on your computer. So yeah, so first we'll just jump into kind of the Hyprland configuration itself. So just a quick overview of how everything works within the Hyprland configuration. The Hyprland configuration is always stored in your .config under Hyper folder, and then you'll see the hyprland.conf. So that's going to be your Hyprland configuration file. And depending on how you have it installed, some configurations will just have a Hyprland config, and everything is in that one config. There's nothing, sourced out or anywhere else like you see here with all these other different comps in here. Some just have the Hyprland, so if you don't see all these extra ones, don't fear. You can still do all this with one, and I can show you how to source out to make it like this, where it's all divided into more feasible and easier to find configuration files like this. And if you're wondering how to access the .config, if you have a file explorer open, make sure you do Control H, and then all of the hidden files, so anything with a dot in front of it will show up, and then you can access the config folder just like that. And then all of your config folder, or all of the folders within your config, is in here. And then you can go to Hyper, and then you can open this in VS Code, or you can do this through Nano or Vim, or however you want to do your editing for your text files here. So that is just a quick intro on how to get into that. So yeah, so once you're in your Hyprland configuration, it's going to be broken up into sections. So I'm using a install script that I just found recently called Meow Arch. They are actually using the IDE configuration that they kind of just spun off and did things on their own, and it's kind of like the old version of the IDE before it was taken over by a new contributor. So I kind of like the way it's laid out because it reminds me of the way it was laid out before. It is very minimal. There's like not much changed, other than does have a Capuchin theme on it by default, which obviously you can change, but we can get into that type of thing a little bit later. So here you can see I have all of my launch options here. So by default, you do want to have these top ones. By default, you do want to have these top ones up here. Those are vital just to get everything working under Wayland and the environment itself. And then below this depends on what you're actually using. So I'm using the Hyper panel. So that's where you can see I have disabled the Dunks notification system here by putting a hashtag in front of it. So basically this is just commenting out this line, so you can it's no longer being used in the actual code. So you just have to put that in front of something if you want to comment it out. That's why you see everything else, things like this, like explaining things, are all commented out. They're not actually visible. So yeah, so I have Hyper panel, which is my panel that's at the top up here. So I'm exec once is how you launch an application as soon as you log into your system. So as soon as I log into my Hyprland from my lock screen, all of these options are executed immediately. So anything that you want to have run, by default, do here. Similar to like, KDE has the startup apps, and Windows has startup apps, and pretty much every desktop environment has startup apps. This is where your startup apps go. So essentially, I don't need this one. This one, I was just testing something previously, so I don't actually need that one anymore. But so I'm using Sway Idle and Sway Lock as my lock screen. I just prefer it. It works a little bit better for NVIDIA for whatever reason. I was having issues with the Hyper Lock option and Hyper Idle. So I am using Sway Idle and Sway Lock for that reason. And then this is launching my dock that you see here at the bottom, and with all the configuration for that specific dock. So if you want something similar to what I have here, you can actually just copy this. Now this last part, it is using my Rofi option. So That's this little pop-up here for my app launcher. So you may want to take that off if you're not using Rofi, but yeah. And then the SWWW daemon is just the wallpaper daemon that I'm using. And then you have a couple other things for like the clipboard storage and things like that there. And then I have a section for apps that I like to have launched. So I have Discord, Telegram, and YouTube Desk all launched as soon as I log into my system, and I actually have them go to specific monitors that I have on my system automatically. And I can show you how that works a little bit later as well, but those are all launching. And then I have my environment variables here. This is just stating which card that I want to use, and then there are some default ones that you do have to have for your desktop to run accordingly in your environment. You probably will already have these already set up depending on how you installed your Hyprland configuration. And then we're going to get into the input section here. So this section, we do have a bunch of different things that you can do. So if you have a laptop, this is where you can say if you want to be able to scroll with your touchpad on the laptop, and then also your keyboard layout and configuration. And also I added this was not in mine by default, but I like to have my num lock option on. So I did add this line, num lock by default equals true. And a lot of the configuration here is pretty plain text. It's not like too hard to understand, or some things are a little bit, out there, and you may have to, search or just Google what certain things mean. And I often use AI for a lot of things. So in order to, find out if you can add this numlock option. So yeah, typically what I would do is just, highlight the section that I'm, working on, and then go ahead and copy that. And then I would I use Gemini, but you can use whatever, AI tool that you want to use. And basically I would just say, how would I add it so I can have the num lock on by default in my Hyprland config. And then I would just paste the option that I have here, and then just press enter. And then it would just spit out and basically give me the option. So you should replace num lock by default to true. And then it even gives me the snippet of what I can do. And I could literally just copy this and paste it back into my system here if I wanted to, but obviously I already did that. So, but it gives you, a breakdown and explains how to do it and what to do. So that is definitely an option. If you are confused or trying to figure things out, I use, AI. It's not for everybody, but that's just what I use to find things out sometimes. So it's definitely an option to help you and configure, certain things that you're unsure about. And that window that I have there is just a web app that I have, and then I have it actually just opening in a certain spot, which I can show you once we get to the window rules down the road there. So yeah, so that's your input section there, and then I do have gestures here. So it's true, 3 fingers. You can swipe between workspaces with gestures with the num or with the trackpad on your laptop. And then you have different layouts. Most of these are just default. I haven't really changed anything there. And then different things like miscellaneous. If you want that Hyprland logo and stuff to go away, you have to set this as true. Do not force that default wallpaper. You set that as 0. And then down here, I have the sourcing. So this is how you get it to have all of these different options to go into your config. So instead of having Keybindings as another section within here, which it can get confusing or hard to find certain things if everything's in your one Hyprland configuration file. So what you can do is actually source it. So you just do source equals and then put the path of where you want it to be. So there's animations, Keybindings, Windows theme, NVIDIA monitors, and custom prefs. This one was just there by default from the pre-configured Hyprland.files that I installed. I don't really use it for anything, but everything else is basically being used. So basically you can see that you create that configuration text file, and obviously label it .conf, and then you source it out from your configuration here. So now I can go into like Keybindings, for instance, and be able to see all of my Keybindings, and it is sourcing out of the Hyprland configuration. So the Hyprland system itself still sees it as if it's in the Hyprland conf because it's really the only file that's actually reading, but you're just sourcing it out to somewhere else that's in your system. So you can do that however you want, but that's just an option that you can do. So now that we're in Keybindings, this is the default key bindings for Meow Arch that I'm currently using, but it is pretty standard as that goes. So basically they're using main mod. See, there's a global variables. So these you can type this in instead of having to type this to create your actual key bind. So a lot of, configurations use this main mod option, and some just put, super, because that's what it is. And then, so this person also put in sub mod. So that's your main mod plus shift, because there's a lot of times we want to use super plus shift to do, certain, things. And then you also defined different apps or launch terms here for like file, browser, whatever you really want. But you don't have to do this. This is just something that some people do to make it easier when they're actually, creating their key bindings. So like for instance, right here, main mod T is to launch term, which is kitty. But if I want to change that to something else, I can just change it here. So if I want this to be alacrity, I could just change this to alacrity or foot or whatever I want it to be. I can change it here and then automatically change this here. So, and same with file. So I have Nemo right now, but if I want a dolphin or something else, I can just change that here and it'll automatically change here. Now, you really don't have to do that because you can actually just change the term here. So if this just said kitty, I could just change this to alacrity and then it's going to do the same thing. So I don't think you really have to do the global variables, but that's just something, if you want to do it, you can come up here and change it really quickly instead of going to go find it, within your system down here. Maybe that's really the only reason people do it. But yeah, so basically the way that the binds work is you just need to have bind equals the key that is the mod key that you're using, and then the after the comma is the actual key that you want to use with that mod key. So if you have multiple mod keys that you need, so if it's like, control shift and then escape to do the btop, then you have to put both of those with a plus sign for it. So actually right now I do want to add a new bind to open my Moonlight automatically. So right now I already have shift mod M to open my messages app. So maybe I'll do Moonlight as super control M. So basically what I would do is just do bind equals super plus control. And then I want it to be M. And then you want to exec, which is, executing the command, and then what you want that command to be. So in this case, it would be Moonlight, I think it's -qt, I want to say. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and then I can just test it right away. So every time you save something in your Hyprland configuration, it does, save immediately. So you don't have to do a reload, but you can do a reload just to make sure. But now if I press that, okay, so it's not opening, so it's not Moonlight Qt. It might just be Moonlight. So I'm going to go ahead and Control S and save that. And then now press Control M. Yep, and then it launched. So you just have to know what the command is to launch your specific application that you have, and then you just add it at the end there. So now I have that keybind, and as you can see, I have a bunch of other, binds to open different things. And I actually created the script for somebody that asked me to be able to like toggle the dock on and off. So I created this script here. So if you want to run a script, you would just do the exec and then do the path of where that script is, and then it'll actually run that script as long as you have it as the end option at the end of the line there. So yeah, so that's how you would create, different key bindings. And a lot of configurations already come with like system controls and stuff like that for like your volume and play and stop and your brightness and things like that as well. And then for your Hyprland things, the default thing is like mod and then the number to go to a specific workspace. I like to use relative workspaces. So this way, whenever I go to the right a workspace, it will open it if it's not open yet. Otherwise, it would only go as far as the workspaces you have defined in your system. So I like it to be the relative. So that's what this R is standing for, relative +1. So if I, go over 1, I'll go to 6, 7, 8. And so it's just adding another one. As you can see in the top here, it's adding another workspace every time I go over, even though I only have 5 defined on my system currently. So yeah, so that's the way I like to have it set up. But you can search the Hyprland wiki to understand the differences between all of those different workspaces options. But you would set that as a keybind within your system here. And then, as you can see, there's a bunch of different options to be able to move windows and configure your windows, resize windows. So all of those are options in here that you can use to create it exactly the way you want it to be. So yeah, so that's key bindings, and then I'll move over to monitors. So I have one, two, three, four monitors in front of me, one being my actual laptop itself. So that's why I have so much going on right here, but you may only have one or two monitors. But I'm actually generating this using the NWG display. So if you just download NWG display from your repo, it should be in most the Arch or Fedora repos. But so if I go into my display settings here, so as you can see, this is actually a GUI option that you configure this, and it automatically puts this into the monitor's comp. So this one you do have the source in your Hyprland. If you go to their GitHub page when you download this, it does explain to you how to do that. But you would just add the monitor's comp, and I believe the workspaces conf as well, because you can actually define workspaces within here as well if you want to. But I just use it for the actual displays itself. But I can actually move these, around just like you would like on Windows or Mac OS or even like KDE or anything else. It's much easier to do than having to understand what this is actually doing over here, because this just looks like a foreign language. This is not as straightforward. And I've had so many problems with trying to get like monitors and stuff to do exactly what I want them to do and be where I want them to be, because you have to do a lot of math to figure out what these exact numbers are and to find out what this is doing. But basically it's just saying this is the monitor name from the output that I have. And to find out all your monitors, you can do hyper CTL monitors, and then it'll show all of the monitors outputs here. So this is how you know that the HDMI one is this name here, EDP. Is this name here? This is my main monitor, and then I have two HP like external monitors as well. So these are the DP8 and DP7. So that's how you can find out what those are, and it does actually show you exactly what the spacing and everything is on those monitors and what available modes that they do have for those monitors when you do that. So if you are confused of what the outputs and stuff are, you can just do the Hyper CTL then monitors, and you can see exactly what they are. So yeah, so that's monitors. I like to keep it simple. I don't like to make it any harder than it needs to be. But if you do want a difficult one, you can use like AI or something to help you figure that out, as long as you know how to explain what you're trying to achieve. So yeah, so that's the monitor section for the config there. And then window rules. Window rules are essentially what you want your windows to, where you want them to display, how you want them to display, what do you want them to look like when they're displayed. So this is opacity. So this is like the transparency of the window. So you can set that per app that you have. So for instance, I have, what is this, VS Code right here. So this is 80 right now, but I can actually change this to be even more transparent if I wanted to. So if I want to do like 5 here, and then go ahead and save that. As you can see, it's the whole window just got more, transparent. So everything happens, immediately. But I believe I had that at 8, and then I can go ahead and save it. And then also, if you want to figure out what the actual class name, because it's using class as the name, not the name that you use to actually launch this app. So that can get confusing sometimes, but you're actually using the class name, not the launch name. If you want to figure out what that is, you just go to Hyper CTL. If I could type, that'd be cool. And then clients. And then as long as the app is open, it'll show it in this list. So these are all the apps that I currently have open on my system. So I have the VS Code, so that class is code. So if I want a different app to be, a certain transparency, then I would add that class name into that section that I wanted to. And the easiest way to do that, if you already have some of these in there, it's just to copy it and then create a new line and then paste it and then just change the name at the end there to be what you want it to be. So that's opacity. You can make things float automatically. So that's how I have this Gemini web app automatically floating. So I have that float, and then I have that one float, and then I have it move to a certain section within my screen using this option here. So you can size it and move the window to where you want it to be, automatically by having this launch rule here. So now every time I open app, it actually puts it over here like it's a side panel type thing, but it's not. And this is just inspiration from having infor.files installed. I really got used to having that option. And now that I wasn't using it, and the fact that I was using Hyperpanel instead of the quick shell that they were using in that one, I didn't have that capability anymore, and I'm no longer on those .files anyway. So now I can just put this on any .files that I want by just having this web app open automatically with it signed in. And then I do have some other window rules over here. Actually, I have this in the wrong spot. This needs to be under the move section, and then this one needs to be under size. None of this matters. This is just organization. It's still going to do the same thing, even if it's not in the same spot. But this is so I can organize it the way I want it to be, and not to be confused when I come to do something. So yeah, so that's how you would define just certain windows to do certain things. So like for instance, when I want to launch the pulse audio Pavoo control, I wanted that to float. Or when I open some certain type of window to add like a file, or like when I'm selecting a file or something, I want that window to pop up, float, and be in the center. So I have these set here. Apparently you can do it where you do center and float together, but for whatever reason that didn't work for me, so I had to do them as separate lines here. But yeah, you can define pretty much anything you want your windows to do by default by adding different window rules to make sure they do what you want them to do when they open. So that's the beauty of Hyprland, is being able to really make it your own and make everything your full workflow work exactly the way you want to. So if you want to open a specific thing, and then I also have the workspaces, so if I want them to open on a specific workspace itself, I can create the rule of how I want it to open, and then also what workspace I want it to launch on. Technically, you can put all of these in the same spot, but I just have them, separate just to find it easy. So like I have Discord going to Workspace 2 automatically. So like whenever I log into my system, you saw that Discord, Telegram, and YouTube Desk automatically open. And they're also going to the workspace that I want them to go to. So, which is the workspaces are defined on different monitors within my setup. So they're automatically just going to the different screens that I want them to as soon as I log in, which is really nice. I don't have to like open anything or do anything, and I just have everything exactly the way I want it. And just continue my workflow immediately once I have logged in. So that's really nice to have, and I kind of just like the ease of use of that, to have everything exactly where I want it as soon as I log in. I know you can do stuff like that with like KDE. I'm sure you can probably do it on GNOME, but I think it's just more fluid, and it's actually a little bit easier to do on here than it is on some desktops. But so yeah, so that's Workspaces. And then last but not least, a little bit of theming here. So you can set your cursor. So I have the classic, I never know how to say this, Babata Modern cursor. As you can see, the black cursor here, I have it set to 24. And then I also set the X cursor theme as well. I always do this because certain apps, especially like Flatpaks and other apps that are not, directly supported by Wayland, you'll get either a different cursor or you'll get a resized cursor on those apps. So you do want to define it, either through this way or this way as well. So that way it's cohesive throughout your entire system. And then you would just change the cursor theme to the theme that you have, and then put that cursor into the icons of dot icons folder on your system. So that's why that would work that way. And then you can set your like icon theme, and then so I have that set here, but I'm gonna show you a different way you can do this, much easier way. And then down here you have your decorations. So if you want it to blur, if you want it to dim, when you're hovering over or going over a certain window, you can have that dim. And then this defines like your gaps in and out. So if you want your gaps to be larger or smaller, on the border, or within, between apps when you open new windows, you can set those here. You can set the border size. So that's the size of this border line that's going around the window. And And then you can also set the layout and the decoration. So, or the layout, and you can also set the rounding and how you want it to blur on your system. So there's so many different ways to set this up. So I'm not going to dive too deep into, how that works. You'll have to, check the Hyprland wiki, but this is where you would go to actually, define those things. These things may already be in your Hyprland configuration by default, or you need to create them if you don't have them already. But you also change the rounding of the corners really simply. So if I want like no rounding, I can go to like 2, which I normally like it that way, but with having the rounded hyper panel up here, I like to have some slight rounding on our windows to be a little more cohesive there. So I'll save that. So yeah, so that's how you would do that. But as far as like the actual theming, I actually use another GUI app, which is the GTK settings here. So this is NWG look is what it's called. So I can open that here. As you can see, the Meow Arch Cappuccino Mocha is the one that's selected. But if I wanted to change the theme for everything, I can like just click on a different theme. It's going to show me exactly what that's going to look like in the window here. And then I can just apply it. It's going to apply across all the GTK apps within my system. So this is similar to like apps within GNOME. That's why a lot of people say, if you want to, download Hyprland and install it, do a desktop with GNOME and then install it, because a lot of the same dependencies apply for it. But obviously I'm going to keep it on this one. And then you can change your icon theme here. So this is where I was saying you can, change your icon theme. So I can change this to, Papyrus if I wanted to, which is another one that I really like. That's why I have that in here. So I can change that to that and then just hit apply, and then all my icons would change as well. But I'm not going to do that because I do like the current ones that I do have right now. And then you also change your mouse cursor here as well. So that's just a nicer way to do it, and the font and everything you can change within the GUI here. And that you would just download nwg-look from your repository, and you would have this option to do that as well. So that's a nice and easier way to theme your apps without having to do a lot of crazy configuration within your Hyprland config. Just make it easier on yourself. I'm all about easy. So that kind of wraps up the tutorial for today. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below. Let me know if there's anything else you want me to go over in more detail. You could also join my Discord, and me and my community can kind of help you out with different things. For instance, with that script, someone wanted a script to toggle this dock on and off at the bottom, so I helped them with that. So if you need any help with configuring something, definitely join the Discord, and we can help you out the best we can. And I'm really trying to make this full-time gig, so please consider liking and subscribing the video. And you can also donate by choosing the thanks button below, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.